He sat there, in silence, in the middle of the Swiss mountains, Carl Jung staring at the lake, surrounded by stillness, but inside his mind, chaos. A patient had just told him a dream about a golden scarab, but the next moment, he heard a tapping at the window. He opened it, and there it was. A scarab beetle. Not just similar. The exact insect from the dream. And that was the moment he knew this wasn't coincidence. This was something else. Something deeper. Something that shattered the rules of logic and causality. He called it synchronicity. And once you understand it, your entire life will change. Because synchronicity is not just a strange psychological idea. It might be the most powerful secret about reality that no one has ever told you.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You felt it. Maybe you thought of someone you hadn't spoken to in years and they called you an hour later. Maybe a number, a song, a symbol kept appearing over and over, and then something happened that made it all make sense. Maybe you had a gut feeling to go left instead of right, and it changed your life. That's synchronicity. And it's not random. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's meaning. It's the unconscious mind reaching into the external world and whispering, "Look closer." And the craziest part, most people ignore it. Let me ask you something. How many signs have you missed because you were too busy, too logical, too distracted to pay attention? What if reality isn't just a machine of cause and effect, but a living, breathing mystery that speaks to you in symbols and patterns? Jung believed that synchronicities were the psyche's way of connecting the inner and the outer worlds. He said that when something inside you becomes deeply meaningful, reality itself can bend to reflect it. But not in a fantasy way, but in a precise, symbolic, almost poetic way that defies scientific explanation. But let's not get swept away too fast. Let's break this down. Jung didn't believe in pure randomness. He believed that the psyche, the unconscious mind, was not just a personal space of dreams and memories. It was connected to something universal. So when your unconscious is stirred by a dream, a trauma, a deep longing, it sends out a kind of signal. And sometimes the outer world responds. It reflects that inner signal through a meaningful coincidence. That's what makes it synchronicity, not just coincidence, but meaningful coincidence. A bridge between the inner subjective world and the outer objective world. Let me give you a real example. A woman is struggling with grief after the loss of her father. She feels disconnected, numb. One night, she dreams of a white feather falling from the sky. The next morning, walking to work, a single white feather floats down in front of her. She stops. She cries. She feels her father's presence. But now, did the feather cause the emotion? No, but it reflected it. It mirrored something sacred inside her. That's synchronicity. It is the soul recognizing itself in the mirror of reality. And it's happening all the time. The problem is, we're not looking. We've been trained to ignore the symbolic. We've been taught to worship logic, causality, control. But the unconscious doesn't work like that. It speaks in symbols. It sings in metaphors. It dances in dreams. And when it wants your attention, it shakes the world around you. That's why Jung said, the psyche is not inside us. We are inside the psyche. That will flip your whole worldview. Because if that's true, then life isn't out there, happening to you. Life is happening through you. And the synchronicities you experience aren't just random sparks, they're signs, messages, invitations. But what are they inviting you to? That's the real question. Because synchronicity isn't just a cool concept. It's a call to wake up, a call to align with your deeper self, a call to listen to the voice behind the noise. And the more aligned you are with your true purpose, the more frequent, the more powerful, the more impossible your synchronicities become. I've seen it. People who begin inner work, who start healing, journaling, meditating, confronting their past, they start noticing synchronicities everywhere. Numbers, animals, dreams, songs, conversations. And each one pulls them closer to something real, something sacred. But here's the paradox. The more you chase synchronicity, the less it shows up. Because it's not a trick, it's not a hack. It's not something you can control. It's something you receive. You have to listen. You have to feel. You have to surrender. That's why synchronicity is so powerful. It bypasses the ego. It humbles you. It reminds you that you're a thread in a much larger tapestry. And every time the thread vibrates, the whole pattern shifts. Now, let's go deeper. Jung believed that synchronicity was tied to the archetypes. You remember those universal symbols, patterns of behavior that live in the collective unconscious. When an archetype is activated in you, say, the hero, the lover, the seeker, it doesn't just influence your thoughts. It changes your reality. You start attracting experiences, people, symbols that match that archetype. But you're not manifesting them in some law of attraction way. You're resonating with them, like a tuning fork that causes other forks to vibrate. That's synchronicity. You live the myth, and the world responds. Think about that. What myth are you living right now without realizing it? What archetype is running your life? Are you the orphan, always seeking belonging? The warrior, always fighting for meaning? The magician, seeking transformation? The lover, yearning for wholeness? Your synchronicities will tell you. They're the breadcrumbs, the signs, the moments when the dream breaks through the illusion of waking life and says, "This is the path." But here's a warning. Synchronicity is not always pleasant, because the unconscious doesn't care about comfort. It cares about growth. So sometimes the signs are painful. The breakup that leads to your awakening. The job loss that forces you to find your calling. The illness that cracks open your soul. These too are synchronicities. Just because they hurt doesn't mean they're not sacred. In fact, pain is often the most honest messenger of all. Let me ask you something that might shake you. What if every major turning point in your life was guided not just by your choices, but by synchronicity? What if the people you met, the books you read, the strange coincidences that pushed you one way or another, what if they weren't coincidences at all? What if they were the unconscious guiding you toward yourself, toward individuation, toward wholeness? Jung said that synchronicity is the expression of the self in the form of events. Not thoughts, not feelings, events, or reality itself bending to mirror your inner world. But that's big. That's not just psychology. That's metaphysics. That suggests that consciousness is not just in your brain, it's in the fabric of the universe. And when your personal consciousness aligns with deeper truth, the universe responds. This is why ancient cultures lived by signs. They watched the stars, the animals, the dreams. They didn't see life as a random sequence. They saw it as a story, a myth unfolding. And they knew that to live well, you had to listen. You had to respect the symbolic. But we've lost that. We've silenced it. We've buried it under data and algorithms. And yet it's still here, waiting, whispering, offering us a chance to remember what we are. So how do we start listening again? How do we tune into synchronicity and let it guide us instead of scaring us? First, we slow down. Synchronicity doesn't scream. It whispers. You have to create silence in your life. Meditate. Walk without headphones. Journal your dreams. Pay attention to what captures your soul, not just your mind. Second, you reflect. Don't just dismiss strange events. Ask, what was I feeling just before this happened? What archetype might be at play? What lesson is being offered here? Third, you trust. This is the hardest one, because the mind wants proof. The ego wants control. But synchronicity asks for surrender, and for openness, for humility. You trust the process. You trust the signs. And you act not impulsively, but intuitively. And finally, you integrate. You don't just chase signs. You live them. You take the insight and you embody it. You let it change you. That's where the real miracle happens, not in the sign itself, but in who you become because of it. Now, I want you to think back to the last time you experienced synchronicity. Maybe it was a number, a symbol, a dream, a phrase someone said at the exact moment you needed to hear it. Don't dismiss it. Revisit it. Ask yourself, what was life trying to tell me? What part of me was waking up? And now ask yourself this: what if the next synchronicity you experience is the key to unlocking your deepest potential? Let's go even deeper. If synchronicity is the language of the unconscious, then learning to interpret it is not just a skill, it's a sacred responsibility. Because once you start seeing the world through this lens, once you stop dismissing the so-called coincidences and start honoring them as messages, everything changes. Life is no longer something happening to you. It becomes a dialogue between you and something greater, your unconscious, yourself, the universe, or perhaps even God. Whatever name you give it, the core truth remains: synchronicity is not chaos. It's order. A hidden order that doesn't fit our linear logic but follows a deeper kind of intelligence, one that is symbolic, emotional, archetypal. And when you align with that order, when you begin to live in harmony with it, you start to experience a kind of flow that defies explanation. Now think about this. How many decisions have you made from logic that led you nowhere? And how many times did your gut say something? Your heart whispered something different, and you ignored it only to realize later that the signs were there all along. We've been trained to trust the rational mind, but Jung understood that the unconscious is not irrational, it's transrational. It's beyond the intellect. It sees patterns we cannot see. It knows what we do not know. So when synchronicity occurs, it's often because the unconscious is trying to help us leap past the limitations of reason and into the truth of the moment, into something archetypal and transformative. But let's make this practical. Suppose you start seeing the same number over and over: 1111, 222, 444. You could dismiss it as chance, or you could pause and ask, what moment am I in right now? What decision, what emotion, what archetype is surfacing in my life? Numbers, like all symbols, are containers of meaning. In ancient traditions, they represented spiritual truths, stages of development, cosmic structures. To the unconscious, Numbers are not math, they're messages. Or suppose you keep hearing the same phrase from different people, or see the same animal repeatedly, or dream of the same place over and over. These are not just quirks of perception. They are patterns. And the unconscious speaks through pattern. It's like a dream breaking into waking life. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And this is where it gets radical. Because Jung didn't just believe synchronicity was a psychological event. He believed it pointed to a unifying principle in the universe. He called it the unius mundus, the one world, a realm where psyche and matter are not separate but intertwined. In that realm, your inner world and outer world are reflections of the same deeper truth. Synchronicity is a crack in the wall between the two, a moment when that unity shines through. So when something synchronistic happens, it's not just telling you something, it's revealing that you and the world are not separate. You are part of the same living mystery. But this realization is not just beautiful, it's also terrifying, because it means responsibility. It means you can no longer pretend to be a victim of randomness. You must begin to live as if your inner world matters. You must begin to take your dreams seriously, your emotions seriously, your intuition seriously. You must begin to see yourself as a participant in creation, not just a spectator. That's what Jung meant when he said the unconscious compensates the conscious mind. If your conscious mind is out of balance, too logical, too ego-driven, too disconnected, the unconscious sends you dreams, symbols, even synchronicities to restore balance. So if you're ignoring your purpose, if you're betraying your truth, if you're stuck in a life that doesn't reflect your soul, the unconscious will try to break through. And it will use synchronicity to do it. But here's the twist. Not all synchronicities are about grand spiritual awakenings. Some are subtle, some are quiet. A book falling off a shelf, a stranger saying exactly what you needed to hear, a delay that leads you to meet someone who changes everything. These moments don't always feel dramatic, but their impact can be life-altering. And the more you honor them, the more they show up. It's like tuning a radio. The more you listen, the clearer the signal becomes. But if you ignore it, if you fall back into sleep, into doubt, into cynicism, the signal fades. Not because the universe stops speaking, but because you stop listening. So how do we become better listeners? How do we live in a way that invites synchronicity, that honors it, that uses it to grow, to heal, to awaken? First, we cultivate presence. Synchronicity doesn't happen when you're lost in thought, scrolling endlessly, rushing from one task to the next. It happens in the gaps in the stillness. So you must create space in your life. Meditate, walk slowly, be with your breath. Take time to notice the small things. That's where the signs hide, in the subtle, in the overlooked. Second, we develop symbolic literacy. The unconscious doesn't speak in paragraphs. It speaks in images, metaphors, archetypes. So you must learn to see symbolically. This means studying mythology, dreams, religion, poetry, not to memorize, but to feel, and to recognize when a symbol arises in your life, and to ask, what does this mean to me now? What part of my soul is being mirrored here? Third, we follow the thread. When a synchronicity happens, don't just smile and move on. Take action. Follow the hint. Make the call. Read the book. Go to that place. Say yes to the invitation. The unconscious rewards movement. It doesn't want you to just notice, it wants you to engage. Because every synchronicity is a moment of potential, a doorway. And if you walk through it, everything changes. And fourth, we integrate. This is the most important step. Because synchronicity is not meant to entertain you, it's meant to transform you. So, after the sign, the symbol, the moment you must reflect. What did it awaken in me? What do I need to change? What truth must I now live more fully? Without integration, even the most powerful synchronicity becomes just another forgotten memory. Now let me ask you something that might shake your foundations. What if the reason you're watching this right now is itself a synchronicity? What if this moment, these words are not random, but part of your own pattern unfolding? What if your unconscious has brought you here because there is something you're ready to remember? Something you're ready to hear? Something you're ready to become? Because that's the final truth. Synchronicity is not about predicting the future, but it's about awakening to the present. It's about stepping into alignment with who you really are. It's about living your myth, not someone else's. And the signs are always around you, not because life is trying to trick you, but because life is trying to wake you up. And if you answer that call, if you start living as if nothing is random, as if every moment is sacred, as if the universe is conspiring not against you, but with you, then you become something rare. You become a conscious participant in the mystery, a co-creator, a soul on fire. Can you feel it? That subtle vibration in your chest? That sense that something important is happening right now? That's not imagination. That's the unconscious saying yes. This is it. This is your moment. If you've made it to this point, it's not by chance. Something within you has brought you here, and that very act, the act of continuing, of staying immersed in this journey, is itself a kind of synchronicity. You are not merely consuming ideas, you are remembering something deep, something ancient, something sleeping within you that is beginning to stir. This is the real miracle of synchronicity. It's not about external magic tricks or surface-level coincidences. It's about the soul's memory reactivating. It's about coming back into alignment with the core of who you are. Jung didn't create the idea of synchronicity to entertain or mystify. He discovered it because he saw that the human psyche was not a closed system. He saw that we are part of a larger, interconnected pattern, one that includes nature, myth, time, symbol, dream, and matter, and that synchronicity is the thread that connects our personal experiences to the great tapestry of existence. And to truly live in this awareness is to begin walking the path of the awakened human being, someone who no longer sees life as a sequence of meaningless events, but as a living conversation with the self, the soul, the universe, or whatever name you give to that which is beyond names. People often ask, how do I know if something is a synchronicity or just a coincidence? The answer is simpler than you think. If it moves you, if it stirs something in your chest, if it feels charged with significance, it's a synchronicity. It might not make sense to anyone else, but it doesn't have to. Synchronicity is an intimate encounter between your inner world and the outer world. It is not meant to be rationalized, it is meant to be recognized. And when you begin to live in this space of recognition, you become more attuned to the symbolic dimension of life. That means you start to see your dreams not as random firing of neurons, but as messages. You begin to hear lyrics in a song, not just as entertainment, but as echoes of your current emotional state. You begin to view even your struggles through a mythic lens. But that heartbreak wasn't just pain, it was the call to initiation. That failure wasn't just bad luck, it was the dismantling of a false identity. Everything begins to feel alive, intentional, and layered with meaning. But here's the thing, synchronicity doesn't mean predestination. It doesn't mean that everything is scripted and you're just a puppet on strings. It means that the universe responds to your state of being. You are a co-creator, and the quality of the signs you receive is linked directly to the level of consciousness you embody. If you're living in fear, denial, or distraction, the signs might appear as chaos or confusion. But when you enter clarity, presence, and alignment, the signs begin to reflect that. It's like tuning a musical instrument. When you're in tune, the world around you begins to harmonize. That's why deep inner work is essential. It's not just about healing trauma or managing stress. It's about clearing the static so you can receive the signal. And the more inner clarity you create, the more precise, powerful, and transformative your synchronicities become. Let's talk about relationships. One of the most powerful arenas for synchronicity is human connection. Have you ever met someone and felt like you've known them forever? Or had a conversation with a stranger that shifted your entire worldview? Or fallen in love in a way that felt destined, only to have it end in a way that shattered you, yet somehow helped you grow in ways nothing else could? These are synchronistic encounters. Jung believed that when two people meet, it's not just their personalities that interact, but their unconsciouses also meet. And sometimes these unconscious dynamics are so charged, so archetypal, that the meeting itself feels fated. These relationships are not always easy. In fact, the most synchronistic ones are often the most intense, the most challenging, because they are designed not to comfort you, but to transform you. They activate your shadow. They confront your projections. They push you toward integration. And when the lesson is received, something alchemical happens. You become more whole. You reclaim a part of yourself that you had exiled. That is the true purpose of synchronistic relationships, not romance or companionship, but growth. But synchronicity also shows up in solitude, in those quiet moments where you feel lost, disoriented, or empty, and then something unexpected happens. A book appears, a memory surfaces, a dream returns, and suddenly you know. You know you're not alone. You know you're being guided. These are moments of grace. They often come when the ego has been exhausted, when the plans have failed, when the identity you built has cracked. And in that crack, the light enters. Jung said that people don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And it is often in the dark that synchronicity speaks the loudest, because that's when we're finally quiet enough to hear. So how do we embody this understanding? How do we not just talk about synchronicity but live it? The answer lies in how we show up to each moment. Begin by practicing radical presence. Be where you are and feel what you feel. Don't rush past the ordinary, because that's where the extraordinary hides. Then cultivate symbolic awareness. Start noticing patterns, symbols, repetitions. Keep a synchronicity journal. Write down dreams, intuitions, strange encounters, and over time you'll begin to see the threads. Next, stay open to being surprised. But synchronicity thrives in spontaneity. Don't try to control it, create space for it. Let go of the addiction to certainty. Be willing to walk into the mystery. Most importantly, act on it. When a sign appears, don't just analyze it, move with it. If a name keeps appearing, reach out. If a place keeps calling, go. If a story keeps returning, write it. The unconscious rewards action, not speculation. And finally, share the journey. Talk about your experiences, not to convince others, but to affirm your own path. When you speak your synchronicities into the world, you anchor them. You give them life. And you inspire others to listen to their own. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us waking up together. Because synchronicity is not just personal, it's collective. It reminds us that we are not isolated fragments, but interconnected expressions of the same mystery. And when we begin to live as if that's true, when we begin to honor the signs, to trust the process, to walk the path with courage and humility, we become part of something much larger than ourselves. Let's end with this. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived, and synchronicity is the heartbeat of that mystery. It is the way the universe winks at you. It is how your soul says, "I'm still here." Every time it happens, you are being invited back into yourself, back into the deeper story, back into the myth you were born to live. So the question is not whether the signs are there. They are. The question is, are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you willing to let the mystery guide you, even when it doesn't make sense? Because if you are, then you will find that the world is not just a place. It is a mirror. And the miracle of synchronicity is not that life gives you signs. It's that you were always the sign, and now you remember